This book is called Paul Revere and the Bell Ringers. It's in the Childhood of Famous American series. It's written by Jonah Winter and illustrated by Bert Dodson. Many years ago, before America was a country, it was called the 13 Colonies, and it was under British rule. Way up north, in a colony called Massachusetts, there was a town by the sea. It had narrow streets and were crowded with people. This town was called Boston. Tucked away on one very crooked street, in one very dark house, there lived a boy named Paul Revere. Paul worked in his father's shop, learning how to make things with gold and silver. While rich boys sat in school reading, Paul melted and hammered metal over a burning fire. He sweat and strained making teapots and serving trays. While he was hammering, Paul heard his father talking to customers about many things. They talked about Great Britain, the country across the sea that ruled the colonies. There was another thing that Paul loved to hear about: clubs. Grown-ups in Boston loved clubs and meetings. They also loved things called rules and elections. That's mostly what they talk about. That gave Paul some ideas. One Sunday, as Paul and his friends were walking through the narrow streets of Boston, they started talking about forming their own club. "Why should our parents have all the fun?" Paul asked his friends. "Right," said Paul's friend John. "What kind of club should we form?" While walking down a dirty street, Paul and his friends looked around for the answer. "I know," said Paul's friend Barth. "Let's start a street cleaning club." Said Paul. Said the other boys. They kept on walking. Seagulls squawked. "I know," said Paul's friend Joseph. Let's start a bird watchers club." Said Paul. Said the other boys. They kept on walking. When they turned the corner, they saw Christ Church, the tallest building in Boston. The church bells were ringing. "I know," said Paul. "Let's form a bell ringing club." The boys looked up at the bells ringing and ringing. They were the most famous bells in Boston. You could hear them for miles. "Question is," said Joseph, "how do we get the church to let us ring the best bells in Boston?" "Easy," said Paul. "We write up a contract. The contract will have rules of our club. Then we sign the contract." The boys went to Barth's house to think about the contract. Once a week in the evening, the boys would ring the bells. They would also have meetings to vote on new rules. The boys would ring the bells whenever the church wanted them to. If they forgot to show up, the boys would pay money to the church. This is what the boys wrote in their contract. Paul and his friends signed the contract, went to the church, and talked to the priest. He let them ring the bells. Once a week, the boys visited the church, where they learned the bell ringing from an old bell ringer. There were 8 bells in all. Some were big and some were really big. Each boy rang a bell or 2, and each bell made a different sound. The boys learned how to play songs on these bells. It was fun, but it was more than just fun. In the bell ringing club, the boys made their own rules. No one told them what to do. They were in charge. They felt good. It also felt good to make a promise and keep it. It felt good to make music that the whole town could hear. These things were still important to Paul. When he became a man, he joined clubs that helped the colonies become a separate country with its own laws. From the bell ringing club, Paul had learned about helping his town. These lessons gave Paul Revere ideas about how to become one of America's greatest patriots. And then here's a timeline of Paul Revere's life. Paul Revere and the Bell Ringers.